Part 2 of my dream summer transfer window. First of all, I want to say a massive thank you for the support on the first video. It's the most viewed video on this channel. I'm loving the YouTube grind at the moment, and you guys are making it worth it. If you've not seen that first part, I would suggest going and watching it before you watch part 2. I'll do a brief recap of it, but I think it's worth going and watching the first part. But we'll get straight into it. If you're not already subscribed, please do subscribe. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. Smash a like on the video as well. But without further ado, let's get into it. So, these were the sales from last time. Now, well, they're still the sales that I want to make. I know a lot of you don't think that we necessarily can sell all of these or that we'll make the money that I was saying. I think I said 150 million off the back of all of them. And I hear it. I do hear it. But this is my dream. This is the dream. So in my dream, we sell all of them and we get the money that I think is the best amount we could get for them. Probably won't happen, especially with the market the way it is. But that's kind of, it's the dream, not necessarily the reality. But those were the players that we're going to sell. Obviously, we then went through Gyökeres being the striker that I want. I still do. Douglas Luiz being the midfielder that I want. I still do. And this was in order of priority of the signings that we make. So number 1 is the striker, and for me, it's Gyökeres. Number 2 is the midfielder. It's Douglas Luiz. Obviously, I said before, I think Douglas Luiz would be very difficult, and there are some alternatives there. I was really impressed with Onana over the international break, I have to say, for Belgium. I thought, especially in the England game, very impressive. But on to the third priority. And for me, it's a Bukayo Saka backup. Now, not necessarily directly a like-for-like replacement for Bukayo Saka, but I do think we will have an issue next year. I think we already have an issue in the fact that we overuse Bukayo Saka, and he missed the international break. He's dealing with something that apparently he's been dealing with for a lot of the season. He is currently, as I'm recording this, a doubt potentially for the Man City game. And it's like, I understand why Arteta uses him so much, because there isn't a replacement for him. Certainly not a like-for-like replacement, and certainly not someone that's at a high enough level for them to really compete with Bukayo Saka. And so he gets overused, and I think that's a big problem. And it will be, we've got 14 games in 49 days if we reach the semi-finals of the Champions League. There's then a 2.5-week, 3-week break, and then it's the Euros. Then there's a 2-week break, and it's pre-season. Like, the kid isn't going to get any rest between now and the start of next season. Like I said, in my sales, I include Reece Nelson in that, so that's one of those players, and I think he has to be replaced. And I know some people say, okay, well, we're going to bring in a striker. That frees up Gabriel Jesus. He can play off the right. Leandro Trossard can play off the right. It's not really like for like. I think ideally it needs to be a left-footed player that has a similar skill set to Saka. Don't get me wrong. I think Jesus will become a brilliant, versatile attacker for us that can play across the front three. I think, Trossard off the right, I'm not a huge fan of, to be totally honest. And there's a reason that a lot of the time we've seen Fabio Vieira come on the right-hand side. And I think it's mainly because he's left-footed. I think that is the predominant reason for it. And for me, Fabio Vieira is not the guy to play off the right-hand side. I don't think that's where he should be playing, but he's been playing there out of necessity as a left-footer. And so I've kind of drafted 4 options that I think are the best 4. Pedro Neto, Elise, Matthias Sule, and Nico Williams. Now, they've all got their own flaws. They've all got their own problems. They've all got their own benefits and things that I like about them. Pedro Neto, for me, would be number 1 if his injury issues weren't such a problem. He's left-footed. He's rapid. His output in the final third is sensational. But the consistent hamstring issues are really problematic. It's now both of his hamstrings have basically gone in not the absolute worst way they can, but one of the worst ways they can. They've not ripped off the bone, but they've had pretty much the worst tear you can get in both of them. That is massively problematic. In fact, actually, I've got this. Let me put it onto this slide. So this is all 4 of those guys and their stats. So Pedro Neto would be number 1. Injuries, big concern. Elise, big fan. I think in terms of, if you look at his all-round game, his statistics, you look at his player traits up here, he ticks all the boxes. He takes so many touches. His chance creation is sublime. Again, injury issues are a concern. One big difference that I would factor between Elise and Neto, who are probably my 2 favorites, they're also the 2 most expensive options. One big difference, given that they both have the injury issues, is this. the number of touches that they take. Neto is far more of a counter-attacking player. Elise is very comfortable on the ball, and in a sense is far more similar to Bukayo Saka, in my opinion, in that sense. So, look, it's not often that we get the opportunity to counter-attack. And in some ways, I think Martinelli is the guy that we have for that, and he's the only guy that we need for it, unless he's injured. Now, one difference between Elise and Neto is I think Pedro Neto would be far more comfortable off the left, and has been far more comfortable off the left than Michael Elise ever has. But in terms of all-round game, I think Elise's got more. And again, like probably he'd be the favourite. I think maybe he has some attitude problems that we've heard about in the past. If Arteta goes and gets him, Arteta doesn't believe those attitude problems exist. And so I think Elise would be the one. If you then start looking abroad, because these two, by the way, you're probably going to be looking at 60 million for Neto. You might be looking at like 70 or 80 for Elise in the market, honestly, which is it's arguably too much, especially for Elise, a guy that's played 9 games this season, or started 9 games this season in the Premier League. Like, it's worrying. You've then got Nico Williams, who is a really exciting player in La Liga. He's right-footed, which I think is a problem for me. I do think I'm massively leaning on the side of needing a left footer. I think if you're looking at Martinelli, Trossard, Jesus, all right-footed, I do think you need a left footer. But Nico Williams, like his creativity, he's got 9 assists already this season. He's an exciting player. I did watch him for Spain during the international break. Wasn't blown away, being honest. But I have been excited by him when I've seen him in La Liga. So he's an option, but less of an option because he's right-footed. And then you've got Matthias Süle, who's a bit of a left field option, who I've seen far less of in general. You know, he's only he's played all season pretty much for Frosinone on loan from Juventus. Left footer, plays off the right hand side. Doesn't quite have the physical attributes, I don't think, that you necessarily need in the Premier League yet, but he is only 20 years old. He'd be far cheaper if Juventus were to let him go. His chance creation, again, he's very comfortable on the ball. He's someone that I would see moving more in, like he's not going to stand out on the touchline as a wide winger. He's definitely someone that's going to come more inside. I could see him linking up really well with Martin Odegaard. But it is definitely more left field and probably not someone necessarily that I think could come in and replace Bukayo Saka or step up straight away for Bukayo Saka, but you'd be paying less money for him. So if I was to rank these in order of how I'd want them, I'd probably go Elise at 1, which I have changed my mind on. I do think I've changed my mind on that since a few weeks ago, but I think Elise would be number 1. Neto would be number 2 with big concerns about injuries. Süle would be number 3 and Nico Williams would be number 4. But we'll see what happens with them. I think Elise is going to end up at United probably, or Chelsea. Obviously, Chelsea were in for him previously. But we'll see how it goes. He is. I think he's the best overall player on that list, being honest. Moving on, and this is now on to number 4, the defender. Which a lot of people have spoken about, and it's an interesting one. I don't think it's as high priority as people seem to think it is, or some people seem to think it is. I made a TikTok about the positions that we needed to fill, and the defender was 4th on my list. And there were people in the comments that said that were really kind of adamant that we needed a left back, which I think is interesting, and just adamant that a defender was a higher priority. And the reason I don't think that is true is that currently, even if you take Cedric out, and obviously I said that, you know, Cedric is going to move on. We're not going to sell him. He'll just leave the club on a free. We still have a lot of defenders at the club who are at a high enough level to play. And so you'd have to be looking at it going, well, we're going to have to sell a defender, like one of our better defenders, to really have room in the squad for another defender to come in. Now, the way that the squad works in the Premier League, you have 9 substitutes, and Arsenal almost always have 1 goalkeeper, 2 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 attackers. So you're looking at space for 2 defenders on the bench. Well, let's just say, for example, our defence is Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Kivior. You've then got Zinchenko and Tomiyasu on the bench, and then you've got Timber, who will be coming back. So even once Cedric's gone, once Timber's back, one of arguably Timber, Kivior, Zinchenko, and Tomiyasu won't even be in a matchday squad for a Premier League game. Now, that is fine, because throughout the season, you're going to expect that at least one of those players will probably be injured. Like, one of our 8 defenders will likely be injured. But if you're to then go and bring in another one, well, then you're talking about having 2 of those defenders not in a matchday squad. For example, Tomiyasu and another not in the matchday squad. And that becomes a problem, because then you've got to convince a player that's a good enough level to play for Arsenal that they're 2 injuries away from even being in a matchday squad. And that, I think, is very difficult. And so then you go, okay, well, who do you sell? There were rumours about Jakub Kiwior going back to Serie A, but I think his recent form would suggest to me that he doesn't go. And I think he's probably the number 1 replacement for Gabriel as a left centre-back if Gabriel ever gets injured. Then you've got Zinchenko, who I think has a profile that no one else has. And so if you sell him, you may need to replace that profile in terms of the inverting midfielder. Then you've got Tomiyasu, who's just signed a new deal. Maybe we do look to sell him because of his injury issues. And then you've got Timber, who's not going anywhere. So it's a really difficult one. But I do think, actually, we need a Saliba profile to come in. I don't think we have a Saliba profile, and we massively rely on Saliba in the way that we defend. In the same way that Man City massively rely on Kyle Walker and Tottenham Hotspur massively rely on Van de Ven. It's the pace. It is that recovery pace, because we play such a high line. The only way we can suffocate teams like that playing such a high line is being able to rely on Saliba to sweep things up. Tottenham do it to a lower level overall. They play to a lower level, but they rely on Mickey Van de Ven to do that job. And City rely on Kyle Walker to do it. And so in some ways, I do think we need a Saliba backup, because Saliba can't play as much as he does for as long as he does. And yet, my number 1 is actually Joel Hato from Ajax. Now, I don't think he is a Saliba replacement. He is quick. He's not tall enough, in my opinion, to necessarily hold down that centre-back spot, though he does it for Ajax. But I do just look at this kid, and I think he's going to be one of the best defenders in the world. In terms of the modern game, what you're looking for in a defender, I think he's got it all. He's 18 years old. He's already got 54 games under his belt for Ajax. As a captain at that age is outrageous. You start looking at his player traits, touches, chance creation as a centre-back is unbelievable. Of course, he's got issues with his height, because he is I think just under 6 foot, which obviously isn't very tall for a centre-back. But you start looking at some key statistics when you're looking at an Arsenal defender, and for me, this kid's got it all. You look at this area here, you're talking assists, expected assists, not major for a defender, doesn't matter either way, but successful passes, 2,000 successful passes in the Eredivisie this season with a 92.5% pass accuracy. That's outrageous. And that is the sort of thing that you need at Arsenal. You have to be operating at that level at Arsenal. Long ball accuracy is good. And again, you need that at Arsenal to spread the play. So I really like that. Dribbles, successful dribbles, a lot of them, good at it. Again, dribbling out, we see it from Saliba. I like it. The number of touches he has, the sheer number of touches, he's so comfortable on the ball. Again, that's what you need at Arsenal, because of the way we suffocate teams. Like, you just have to be comfortable playing it around like that. And then even in the defending, all right, tackle, his tackle win percentage isn't brilliant, though he does win a fair amount of tackles. He wins a lot of duels, which is good. I think his duels won percentage is better than Saliba's. His aerial duels won isn't that bad for someone of his height, truthfully, but it's those bottom 3 stats that, for me, are excellent. The number of interceptions and recoveries he makes, and the times that he wins the possession in the final third. Again, that is Arsenal. That is what Arsenal do. Now, he's left-footed, and to me, he's basically, that's a bit of a lazy take, but he's like a left-footed Timber in terms of the versatility, the ability on the ball, the ability to pick up the ball and carry it. All of that is what we got in Timber, and now you've got a left-footed version of the same. He can play at left back. He can play as a centre back. I just think this is the guy that you go and get. Now, it doesn't necessarily fill that Saliba spot. But I just look at him and I'm like, he's the guy you've got to go and get. Now, €100 million price tag, supposedly. They're going to sign a new contract with him which will have a €100 million buyout clause. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and pay 100 million for him. It just means if you want Ajax to have no choice, then that's what you would pay. And so, look, for me, this guy is the number one. If you're then looking at potentially Saliba or Gabriel replacements, I think there are some options that you can go for. You can go for Jared Branthwaite, although left-footed, who I love. I really do rate Jared Branthwaite. I've mentioned him a lot. You know, even if I say so myself, even before the last couple of months where more people have got on it, I remember making a video around Christmas time saying this guy's the real deal. And I'd be very interested in him. Price tag is putting me off. You're looking at supposedly 60, 70, 80 million for him. And I think you'd be competing with Man United. And the way Man United seem to have this real fixation on English players this summer, I think there will be a premium on any English player if Manchester United are interested. And I don't think Arsenal will or should pay that premium because we don't need to. Murillo is then an option from Nottingham Forest because I think you could get him on a discount if Forest have to sell him. He is closest in profile for me to Saliba, though he is left-footed. Again, he is a bit short. He's the same height as Hato, to be fair, but more of a traditional centre-back. Ousmane Diomande is probably the big one. He's almost like a hybrid of Gabriel and Saliba, playing at Sporting Lisbon. I do think he, in some ways, benefits from the system that Sporting Lisbon are playing, but 20 years old, he is operating at such a high level. Physically, he's an absolute monster. He's comfortable on the ball. Like, this would be a guy that I would be delighted for us to sign. Again, I do worry about the price. I know a lot of teams are interested in him, but Arsenal have been scouting Sporting Lisbon. We know they've been scouting them for Gyökeres. They've probably been out there looking at Diomande as well. And then the other option, right, is that we don't buy anyone. We don't go and spend money. We bring through Miles Lewis-Skelly. And we've heard that Arsenal are looking at Miles Lewis-Skelly as the next Zinchenko and that they want to mold him into the Zinchenko sort of inverted left-back role. And given what I said before about the depth that we do have, that might not be a bad option. Like, I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, at right back, White, Timber, Tomiyasu. Right centre-back, arguably, Saliba, but then Ben White, Tomiyasu, Yuri and Timber. Left centre-back, Gabriel, Kivior, Tomiyasu, arguably even Yuri and Timber. And then left-back, Zinchenko, Kivior, Tomiyasu, Yuri and Timber. There is the depth there. And then if you start bringing through maybe a Miles Lewis-Skelly, then that works out as well. So look, there is a potential that we don't go and sign a defender. I do think we will, but there's a potential that we don't. And we bring through someone like Miles Lewis-Skelly. We've also got Ruel Walters in the academy who, you know, could yet come through. Maybe he's the Saliba backup, but I don't think he's ready for it. And then moving on to the final position, and this really is the least priority, but it's the goalkeeper, because I did say I would sell Aaron Ramsdale. Okay, we sell Aaron Ramsdale. Who do we replace him with? And it's a tricky one. I do genuinely think it's a tricky one to figure out, because Ramsdale is too good to be a backup goalkeeper. Like, straight up, he's too good to be a backup goalkeeper. You look at our rivals and who they've got. Okay, City have Ortega. That's unbelievable and largely unsustainable. And I think from some reports, Ortega is looking to move this summer because it's just hard to keep, you know, the drop-off from Ederson to Ortega is not massive because he's a very good goalkeeper, but it's very difficult to keep them at the club, as it will be for Ramsdale. Then you look at Liverpool. Okay, they've got Kelleher coming through. Some people seem to think that Kelleher's like a recently graduated academy product. Kelleher's the same age as Ramsdale, right? And he's not as good as Ramsdale. So it's very difficult to do. Now, do you go young? Do we just go, now is the time for Karl Hein or Arthur Okonkwo to step up? For me, I think it's a tricky one. I don't think Karl Hein's good enough yet. Okonkwo, and look, Karl Hein, I think, is still only just 21, so he doesn't need to step up yet. Okonkwo is 22. He's had a really good season at Wrexham, and I've been impressed with him when I've seen him. Again, is he good enough to step up? Maybe. Maybe Okonkwo is good enough to step up. And you've got to bear in mind that in an ideal world, you know, Raya can play every game. Raya can play every game. The reason we might have to go young is that there aren't many, because the other way you can go is you go on loan maybe. Like, remember we got Matty Ryan? You can go that way. The problem is there aren't many older goalkeepers that have the ability on the ball that we need. Like, that's such a big part of our game now. It makes it difficult. So one player we have been linked to is this guy, Patrick Schulter. Plays for Columbus Crew, 23 years old, a young American. Maybe he comes through. You know, if he is a level above Okonkwo, maybe he comes through, sits there for a couple of years, hones his craft, and then moves on. Maybe that's the option. The other option that I could potentially like, and I can't see this happening. In years gone by, I'd say, okay, there's a real possibility Ramsdale goes to Newcastle, right? And maybe in years gone by, you look at that, Nick Pope goes, okay, well, I'm not going to sit on the bench at Newcastle. I want to move. Is there anyone in the Premier League he can move to and start for? And if there's not, does he go to an Arsenal? And he goes, okay, well, if I'm going to be on the bench, I'd rather be at an Arsenal or a City where I'm likely to win something. The reason I don't think this can happen anymore is, like I said, he's not good enough on the ball. Too many of these goalkeepers, and Pope's not even that old. I think he's 31 or 32, which for a goalkeeper is not that old. But I just don't think he's good enough on the ball. So the goalkeeper one is a bit of a sticky one if we get rid of Ramsdale. Like in the most ideal of worlds, if you were purely looking at it from what is best for Arsenal, you keep Aaron Ramsdale. We're not going to have a better goalkeeper on the bench next season than Aaron Ramsdale. Not going to happen. But I just think he goes. And I also think if you can get 35, 40 million for him, then you probably do that to go and bolster what you can spend on other players. Because, you know, short of an injury to David Raya, the backup goalkeeper is not going to really play. So it's a tricky one. I think this is always something that every top level squad struggles to figure out. I'm sure we will figure it out. But it's the lowest priority for me. It's the fifth priority because worst case scenario, we do just bring in Okonkwo, who I think, you know, probably isn't good enough or experienced enough yet. But it would be a hell of a learning experience for him to become Arsenal's number 2. So there you go. That's it for me. That's the 5 transfers that I would make. Gyökeres, Douglas Luiz, Elise probably, Jorel Hato, and then a goalkeeper, which I'm not too fussed about. Let me know in the comments. Really interested to hear your opinion on this. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear it. I've loved the feedback off the first video. Really interesting. And yeah, other than that, please do subscribe if you're new. Smash a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Remember, I am live at 6:30 on this channel every day talking about Arsenal and general football news. So, you know, if you're new to this channel, I hope to see you drop into some of the live streams. But until then, catch you later.